What I'll do is I'll take, let's say I'll take 5 needles here. So here I have 5 needles. That was often traditionally chosen. You know, the Japanese really like to do things in sets of 5, maybe influenced by the 5 phases, but for example, you buy a set of teacups, you always get 5 of them, stuff like that. Perfect number of people to have at a tea party is 5. A traditional tea ceremony, you always have a host and 4 guests. And so you pick up the needle tips, gather them all together, and you're holding this in exactly the same way as the Shonishin tool, so that the tips of your fingers are in line with the tips of the needles, and then the same thing. You're tapping with the needle tips. You feel it more? Is it
sharper?
It's a little sharper. Is it uncomfortable?
Kind of. Get used to it after a while.
It's really not. As I said, so kids, we usually use the tool. Adults, you can use the needle tip. And then the same thing with the scraping. I'm using just the tips of the needles to produce the scraping. So it's, of course, it is a little more intense, but it's not the kind of thing that, you know, should be. So you can do that on adults. Very good over the shoulders and upper back when there's a lot of muscle tension. Like it's a kind of a variant, I guess, of plum blossom or something.
Can you walk by real quick and show us how you're holding the needles?
Yeah. You gather the tips of the needles all sort of together in one point.
It's in a bundle.
It's in a bundle. In fact, some people actually wrap some thread around there. I've never seen because you're just going to throw this out. I've never seen the necessity of actually doing that. But some people will actually take a thread and wrap it around the needles to sort of hold them together in a kind of a tight little bundle. And then you hold the tips of the needles just so that the tips are at the same level as the ends of your fingers.
So they're barely touching his skin.
Yeah, well what happens is there is a tiny amount of penetration because, you know, your skin sort of, as you strike, it gets compacted back. So it's a very small amount of actual penetration of the needle tip.
How many needles do you have there?
I have 5. But I've even seen it done with as few as 1, but as a 5 is a very common tradition for this. So as you have that option of using the needles instead of a Shonishin tool, but that's usually I reserve that for adults.